Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Open Book Entrepreneur. I'm thrilled that we have James Robbins here with us. He's a public speaker, but he was not always into public speaking. He was first afraid to get onto stages, and now, he's doing it full way. So, James, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Tony, great to see you. Thanks for inviting me on your show here. Yeah, as you said, my name's James. I actually grew up on a small cattle ranch in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, and I was deathly afraid of speaking in public. But then here I am, 30 years later, speaking in public, and I do that a lot. So I mostly teach on leadership and a bunch of other things.
Nice, yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit more about this story? How did you actually get into the public speaking?
So how it started, when I came out of college, I ended up going and working for a church. I had no plans to ever do that, but just one thing fell after another, and all of a sudden I was working in a church as a young guy in my 20s, and I liked helping people, so it was fun for me. And but there you gotta speak in public, and so that's when I began to learn, and because you had to do that a couple of times a week. And honestly, I was just motivated by I didn't want to suck, right? I just didn't want to look stupid. And so it was really fear-based motivation to get better. But after a few years of doing that, I started to feel a bit restless because, I'm entrepreneurial and I wanted to do more. And I remember meeting this guy who was speaking in public. He would go teach people, he would actually teach presentation skills. And I asked him how much he made every time he spoke. And he told me what the number was. And this was a long time ago. And I remember thinking, that guy makes more in 1 hour than I make for an entire month. And then that planted a seed that maybe I could start to do this also. And so that's how I got into the world of speaking.
Nice, yeah, excellent. Thanks for sharing that story. And then, since then, like, what were some of the biggest sort of successes in your speaking career so far? Can you share that with us, please?
Yeah, for sure. I've got a chance to speak on some really cool stages. Probably one of the biggest moments for me was getting invited by John Maxwell and his team to go down to South America and train leaders. So it was just him and I, like all day, teaching together. And so I made a good connection with him. I've shared the stage with some great names: Simon Sinek, President Bill Clinton, Brené Brown. Um, all those moments of just getting to get up on stage and speak to people. I'm still nervous when I do it. I'm just going to tell you. I mean, I've probably done it 3,000 times, but it's everyone is still, there's that activation and a bit of nervousness. And of course, I know how to calm myself down now, but it's also turned out to be the biggest thing that's grown my business. And so I started out as just a speaker, right? Like that's all I would do. I would go to a conference and speak and they would pay me. And then in 2008, when the economy crashed, nobody was hiring any speakers. So then I had to think, oh, I better change. And so that's when I started doing online courses and I added that to my business. And then eventually I added consulting to my business. And so, it's a bigger machine now, but even still to this day, what drives my business is getting up and sharing my message, whether that's at a conference, whether that's on a webinar, whether that's in a podcast. And I would say to anyone who's listening who's a business owner, if you are not using presentations, if you are not finding a way to get your message out, like where it's just you and your voice, you're leaving money on the table. I'm telling you, and especially with the onslaught of AI coming in, and everybody is producing content with AI. How are you going to stand out? And AI still is not there yet to reproduce us fully, although it's probably getting close.
Yeah, it's definitely getting close. And earlier on, I was actually listening to one podcast that was looking into statistics of how many people, for example, publish regularly on LinkedIn. And apparently, there is like 99% of people that are really just going to LinkedIn and checking out posts, and then there is like only 1% of people that are regularly publish content. So exactly like you said, if people are publishing content and if they're able to actually record videos and speak publicly or speak just on a video recordings, it's great thing to actually help them improve their business. So in terms of you mentioned you're doing, you have number of courses and stuff. What are their sort of like based on, what are your offers for the courses?
My main offer for leaders is based on my book that came out in 2012. It's called 9 Minutes on Monday, which seems like a crazy title for a leadership book. But the idea behind it is that it's a leadership framework that helps your people be more engaged at work. So when you think about it, and for those of you who are running your own business, but you have employees, your number one asset really is your staff because how they show up to work each day dictates how much work they're going to get done. I mean, think of it in this way. For those of us who are even the owners, when you think about this, Tony, if you come in on your worst day versus Tony at your best day, well, I'll speak for me. Me at my worst day, me at my best day that's a big difference in terms of how much I get done, how good I am at helping the clients. And our people are no different, right? That there's this range of potential that they have. And what impacts that? Like, what impacts whether an employee is going to operate at this level or at this level? It's leadership, it's culture, it's the kind of culture that you're building. And what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs is you became an entrepreneur because you're creative and you wanted to start this business and you go ahead and do it. But eventually, you've got to become a boss. And now you've got people reporting to you. And so now it's not just the business anymore. Now I've got to help the people in my business be the best version of themselves. So it's also like putting on a hat of being a coach and being a motivator and all of those things. The good news is those skills are learned, so we can learn those. So, anyways, back to your question. My main offering is a program called 9 Minutes on Monday, based on the book. And then, we have a ton of courses on how to hold people accountable, how to have difficult conversations, how to be more productive. Basically, all the things that help leaders be better.
Nice. And so if you're talking about like how someone can be better as a leader, like what's one big tip that you can actually share with our audience?
You have to find a way to be intentional at actually people leading. And what I mean by that is all of us come to work every day and we just got to get stuff done, right? And you've got to make payroll and there's just a lot of things to do. But there's also the business of helping your people be the best versions of themselves, and that takes a little bit of time. So the best thing you can do is find some way to remind yourself, wait a minute, how can I make sure my employees are doing great? And to give you some really quick, easy tips, the first and foremost is, do your employees feel like you have their back? Like, would your employees say to their friends, my boss really cares about me? Because that is such a foundational piece of leadership. It's not about being their friends, but it's about your staff knowing, no, I care about you. I have a genuine interest in you as a person, which is backed up by asking questions about their life, being interested in them. And when we do that, what happens is our staff will trust us more. But there's a very powerful principle called reciprocity. And reciprocity is that when I've done something nice for you, you want to do something nice back. When I care for you, you want to care back. It's like when I've got your back, Tony, you want to have my back. So when you demonstrate consistently to your staff that no, I have your back, I care about you, they want to care about you. They don't want to let you down. They want to work hard for you. They want your company to succeed. But here's the amazing thing that happens. When your people don't feel like you care about them, they will still show up and work, but they won't give you that extra piece of their heart. And I see this all the time when I'm working with big companies. If a leader has been, not caring about their staff, the staff will say things like, well, I'll come in and do my job, but don't think I'm doing anything extra. And it's the anything extra we need, right? So you can always hire, you can always pay for someone's hands, but you've got to win their heart, and you do that by caring about them.
Exactly. Wow, that's really well said. Thank you very much for that answer. So, in terms of your business, what's your goal for your business for next 3 years?
My goal for my business is actually to simplify my business because over the years it's grown a little bit like the garden that needs some pruning. And part of that comes from one of my strengths, which can be also a weakness, which is creativity. So I'm always thinking of a new way to help a client, and then I'm pretty good now at creating programs. I can create a course really quickly. And but every time I create a new course, it's also like a new product, which is it divides your focus a little bit. So I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll adopt more of AI into our programs, how leaders can use AI to grow their team, grow their business. And so we've begun teaching on that now.
Wonderful. And you also mentioned when we were in the green room before we started recording, like you mentioned that you have a podcast that you recently started. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I can for sure. Thanks for asking. I have a podcast called Born to Climb, and it's really a passion project. It's not even tied to my business per se, but basically, the idea is that we were made to walk uphill. Like all of us were born to do something great with our lives. And I don't think it's just like one thing, but there's greatness within all of us. And when we are not in a place where we're feeling challenged and where we're excited about a goal and a future, then we're not living at our full potential. And so that's where the podcast comes from, Born to Climb, right? We're all born to climb, but even if you do get out onto the mountain, you're going to face headwinds, avalanches, cold nights, and then how do you keep going? Right? So you kind of have the two groups of people. The people who are still stuck in base camp, right? They're too afraid to get out of their tent, too afraid to take the risk, to write the book, start their own business, and they keep thinking about it, dreaming all the time about doing it one day, but they never leave the tent. And then there's those that do leave the tent and they get up on the mountain and they realize, oh, this is actually difficult. And how do I keep going? Like, how do I not quit? And so the podcast really deals with both of those groups of people. And the idea is to interview people who have great stories of resilience, of overcoming. And that's what we're doing. So, yeah, love to, for anybody, if you want to check it out, love to have you there.
Nice. And if someone actually from our audience wants to actually find out more about what you do and wants to connect to you, like how they can do that?
They can go to jamesrobbins.com, jamesrobbins.com. That's two B's in Robbins. Of course, connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love that. And just let me know that you heard me here on Tony's show.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great. And then just before we go, is there any question that maybe I didn't ask you, but you would like to share with the audience?
I think because most of your audience is business owners, small business owners, I will do every 2 weeks I do a roundtable for CEOs, and I love doing it online because there's something about us entrepreneurs, like we're a different kind of animal, right? We don't want to just work for someone in some company, and so we take this risk and we think we're going to have all this freedom, and we kind of do, but then we usually work harder than if we had just worked a job. But there's something about us that's very special. And I guess if I was going to say one last thing is that to me, the number one thing that makes entrepreneurs successful is how much they believe in themselves. And nobody told me that when I was starting my business, that so much of my business was like going all in on me. And the times my business has struggled is because I have struggled to believe in me. But if I don't know where you're at right now or who needs to hear this, but when you get to those times where you're frustrated and you think, why is my business not growing more than it is? Yeah, you might need some tools. You might need some, Tony to help you out with some lead flow and lead generation. But underneath all of that, there's got to be a belief that I will figure it out. I always do, and I always will. And so just wanted to pass that on.
Wonderful, James. Thank you so much for these great words and for these tips. And thank you for sharing your story with our audience. Thank you all for watching, listening to this episode. And if you liked it, please drop us a like and subscribe. And see you all in the next episode. Bye bye.